Hello there, RotoBallers. Are you looking to make that playoff push for the fantasy playoffs and are just not sure which quarterbacks you can trust here in week number 11? Don't worry, I got you covered with your week 11 starts and sits at the quarterback position. Let's start with Sam Howell versus the New York Giants. All Sam Howell does is produce fantasy points. Last week, he produced 29 of them despite his top three receivers accounting for 6 catches and 39 yards against the Seahawks? Sam Howell, he spread the ball around the field. Robinson and Gibson, they caught 11 passes, while 7 other pass catchers were responsible for 29 completions. He also topped 300 yards once again and tossed 3 touchdowns, leading to a 4th straight contest with more than 18 fantasy points and his 8th game this season out of 10 in which he has produced at least 16 fantasy points. The Giants, they are hurting, sitting top 5 in fantasy points allowed after watching Dak Prescott lead all fantasy quarterbacks last week, throwing for 404 yards and 5 total touchdowns. Start Sam Howell, don't think twice about it. Also start Kyler Murray versus Houston. Murray's return from his ACL injury went better than expected. The Cardinals' mobile quarterback, he produced 16 fantasy points thanks to a rushing touchdown, 33 rushing yards, 19 of 32 passing, which led to 249 passing yards against the Falcons last week. Now, things could have been even better considering that Murray just missed Hollywood Brown at the beginning of the second quarter on what would have been a 28-yard touchdown pass. Then in the fourth quarter, Murray showed us he was all the way back on that 13-yard scramble for a first down in which he traveled like 70 yards and he actually hit a top speed of 20.17 miles per hour. Last week, the Texans, they allowed Joe Burrow to throw for 347 yards and a pair of touchdowns. This without T. Higgins and this with Jamar Chase less than 100%. You can start Kyler Murray and feel good about it. Another quarterback start this week is Josh Dobbs versus the Denver Broncos. What more can you say about Josh Dobbs? It hasn't been pretty, but it has been productive in fantasy. Dobbs now has 3 consecutive 24-plus fantasy weeks, one which came 2 weeks ago without even looking at the playbook and having his head coach telling him what to do inside his headset. And another came last week when they knocked off the New Orleans Saints. Now, looking at the passing numbers, they have been solid, but they haven't been great. 158 yards 2 weeks ago, 268 yards last week. He has thrown 3 touchdown passes, but more importantly, he's ran for 2 scores while adding 110 yards on the ground in the 2 games in which he's been under center there in Minnesota. Now, Dobbs is going to need to protect the ball against his Broncos team, who has forced 4 turnovers in each of the previous 2 contests against both the Bills and the Chiefs. Also start CJ Stroud. Don't think twice about it. The kid is the real deal, and he has a great matchup against Arizona this week. The last time a rookie led the NFL in passing yards per game was way back in 1939, Davey O'Brien. Now, Stroud, through 9 games this season, has averaged 291.8 yards per game, and he currently leads the league. You start Stroud no matter what. Heck, that means you're starting Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Noah Brown, and Dalton Schultz. I don't care. You're starting everyone on this Houston Texans offense. Sit DeShaun Watson versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. It doesn't get any easier for DeShaun Watson or this Browns offense. A week after facing the Baltimore Ravens, they face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Watson, he looks like he may be on his way back. He certainly is when the fourth quarter rolls around, but anytime the teams face off in the AFC North, I hesitate to start a quarterback. Do you really think that this Steelers team is 6-3 because of Kenny Pickett? No! Pittsburgh has been holding quarterbacks to under 13.5 fantasy points per game thanks to bend but do not break defense. Now, Trevor Lawrence versus Tennessee. Sure, the matchup, it seems great, but we are talking fantasy playoffs on the line, and you simply cannot trust Trevor Lawrence right now. Lawrence is down around QB 18 right now. That's behind Kirk Cousins, who's missed a couple weeks because of injury, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, and Baker Mayfield. I think you get the picture here. If he goes off on your bench or on the waiver wire, so be it. There are better options out there that will let you sleep better at night. If you do start Lawrence for whatever reason, the best that you can hope for is what we saw from Baker Mayfield last week. 278 yards passing, a pair of touchdowns, probably an interception, but 140 of those passing yards are going to go to Christian Kirk. Now, Josh Allen is my final sit of the week versus the New York Jets. Anyone who watches me weekly knows that I like to put out a temper your expectations every week, and this week it is Allen. Allen, he's already fallen victim to this Jets defense way back in week number 1. 236 yards passing and just a single touchdown. Making matters worse, he was also picked off 3 times by Jets safety Jordan Whitehead. Last week, the Broncos held Allen to 177 yards passing, picked him off twice, forced a fumble. Heck, Allen leads the league in interceptions this season with 11. As for the Jets, they are allowing less than 13 fantasy points to the quarterback position this season. And while I do believe that Allen produces more than the 10 fantasy points he did last time around, I wouldn't expect the Jets to give up more than 16. Has the Madden curse struck again? Once again, here's your fantasy starts and sits blitz at the quarterback position. Start Sam Howell versus the New York Giants. Allen, Hurts, Herbert, Prescott, Mahomes, and Stroud are the only quarterbacks averaging more fantasy points per game than Howell. Kyler Murray versus Houston. I saw enough. Murray is back. That means a fantasy QB1 the rest of the way. Josh Dobbs versus Denver. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that Dobbs has been special. 3 straight games, over 24 fantasy points. CJ Stroud versus Arizona. No one averages more yards per game than Stroud. Start him. Sit DeShaun Watson this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cleveland, they may have beat Baltimore, but Watson struggled. Another tough matchup against the Steelers this week. Fade him. Trevor Lawrence versus Tennessee. Grab some pine, sunshine. Can't trust him. Won't start him. 1 game over 18 fantasy points since week number 2. No thanks. Sit Josh Allen versus the New York Jets. Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, and Herbert have all already fallen victim to this Jets defense. Allen, he's going for 2 here. And just a friendly reminder that this video is being recorded on Monday, so plenty can still happen between now and Sunday's kickoff. So check out RotoBaller.com and RotoBaller's Discord channel for all the latest fantasy football news.